Hey everyone, it is me again, your go-to guy for all things not to do in the world of money. Today I want to talk about something that still makes my stomach churn a little, even after all these years. It is about a word that used to scare me senseless, a word that I thought only applied to some far-off, unstable country, never to my own. That word is reset. I remember back when I was in my early 20s, full of fire and ambition, convinced I was going to be a millionaire by 30. I had this idea that investing was a shortcut, a fast lane to wealth. I saw all these headlines, heard all these whispers about hot stocks, crypto booms, and guaranteed high returns. I was young, naive, and desperate to prove myself. Especially since I came from a pretty ordinary family background, I bought into every single bit of it. I chased every trend, put all my eggs into speculative baskets, and pretty much ignored every sensible piece of advice out there. I thought I was smart, I thought I was ahead of the curve. Turns out, I was just a really eager lamb heading straight for the slaughter. I lost so much, not just a little bit, but a significant chunk of what I had painstakingly saved up. It was not a single event, but a series of painful blows, short-term trading failures, where I was just gambling, honestly falling for scams that promised the moon and delivered nothing but empty pockets, over-leveraging myself because I thought I understood risk, when in reality I had no clue what risk management even meant. Emotional trading, panicking when the market dipped, selling low, and then buying back high when FOMO kicked in. It was a messy, heartbreaking saga. Every time I just dug myself deeper. After hitting rock bottom, after seeing years of hard work disappear into thin air, something finally clicked. The illusion of quick riches shattered, and I realized I had been completely reckless. That was my wake-up call. I stopped trying to be a hero. I stopped listening to anonymous internet gurus. I started actually learning, really digging into legitimate financial education, understanding the basics, and most importantly, shedding that dangerous get-rich-quick mentality. Now, my approach is completely different. It is about steady, sensible growth, minimizing risk, and understanding what you are actually putting your money into. My goal these days is to share those painful lessons so you do not have to go through what I did. I am not some finance guru, just a regular guy who made a lot of mistakes and wants to help others avoid the same fate. So, this idea of a reset, for a long time, I heard people talk about it, and my immediate thought was, that is for other countries, not America. We are the greatest, right? We are too stable, too powerful. That is what I used to tell myself when I heard friends talking about it years ago. I would hear them say, reset, and I would dismiss it, thinking it was some conspiracy theory or just fear-mongering. That happens in Mexico, Venezuela, places like that. I would say, never here. Not in the US of a boy. Was I wrong? Or at least I was missing the full picture. What I have come to understand is that a reset is not always some sudden cataclysmic event. Sometimes it is a slow, creeping process, almost like boiling a frog slowly. You do not notice the water getting hotter until it is too late. This is what I have been seeing, and it is a big reason why I changed my whole approach to money. It is not about a single dramatic announcement, but a series of symptoms that point to a system under immense strain. Let us talk about those symptoms, because they are something I have observed firsthand, not just in my personal screw-ups, but in the broader economic landscape. First, there is the unsustainable debt. I mean, it is just mind-boggling when you look at how much debt our country has. When a country cannot even service its own debt, it is a massive red flag. It is like me in my early days taking out loans I could not afford to pay back, hoping some magical investment would save me. Spoiler alert, it never does. Then there are trade imbalances. I did not even know what that meant back then, but essentially it is when a country buys a lot more from other countries than it sells. It is like constantly spending more than you earn that eventually catches up to you. I saw this in my own life when I was chasing hot stocks, constantly putting money in, but rarely seeing real returns, always on the negative side. Tariffs are another one. Remember those trade wars? Tariffs are basically taxes on imported goods. When governments impose them, it is often a sign they are desperate for cash. It is not to help the people, not to fund public projects, but a direct payment to the treasury. It screams lack of money. I used to think tariffs were about fairness or protecting local industries. Now, I see them as a symptom of a deeper financial sickness. And of course, inflation, this is the one that really hits home for most of us, myself included. Inflation is like a silent thief, slowly eroding the value of your money. It starts subtly, but then it ramps up. The Federal Reserve talks about a target inflation rate. But what is happening on the ground is a whole different story. They will tell you inflation is under control, but then you go to the grocery store, and your $100 bill barely buys you a few bags of groceries. I remember a time when $100 could fill a cart. Now, it is a stark reminder of how much purchasing power has vanished. They calculate the Consumer Price Index, which is supposed to measure inflation, but they exclude food and energy. I mean, come on, those are the two things I and everyone else use every single day. It is like trying to measure someone's health by ignoring their vital signs. When I first started trying to figure out this whole investment thing back in 2009, it was hard to find bad news in the financial world. You really had to dig for it. Then, slowly, it started to trickle out. Once a month, then every other week, then weekly. Now, it feels like every single hour there is another piece of news, another crack appearing in the system. It is almost overwhelming. One of the biggest cracks, and one that really hit me hard, is the purchasing power of the dollar. I remember seeing a chart that showed how much the dollar has lost value since it was created in 1913. It is like 97% gone. Think about that. Almost all of its original buying power has been inflated away. It is like having $100 in your bank account, but it only buys you what $3 used to. That is not just a problem. That is a crisis. When a country gets to that point where there is so little left of its currency's purchasing power, it really only has two options. It can either default on its debt, which means basically saying we are not paying what we owe, or it can reset, restructure, revalue. I do not think America will outright default. That would be catastrophic, leading to internal chaos and potentially external threats. Other countries like Mexico and Venezuela, as troubled as they were, they did not default, they reset. It is about a new currency, a new valuation, even if they use fancy words like revaluation or restructuring. And let's not forget the sheer amount of money creation in just 5 years. I think it was around 2020, 30% of all the money ever created in our country was printed. Think about that. 30% in 5 years, that is insane. The government is nervous, they are desperate, and they have to keep the lights on. So they just print more money. It is like me when I was in a hole, just digging faster, hoping I would find a way out. It never works. It is a temporary fix that makes the long-term problem much, much worse. So what would a reset actually look like? I have heard stories and I have learned from people who lived through them. Imagine waking up one morning and the news announces a currency revaluation. Let's say, just to be conservative, it is a 10-to-1 reset. You check your bank account and your $1,000 is now $100. Your $100,000 is now $10,000. $1 million becomes $100,000. They will tell you it is just for accounting to make things easier, especially when there is hyperinflation. They will say the value is the same, just with fewer zeros, but that is the illusion. In Mexico, when they had a 1,000-to-1 reset, they said a cup of coffee that cost 1,000 pesos would now cost 1. Sounds great, right? But within weeks, that same cup of coffee was 2 pesos, then 3, then 4. The inflation continues, just on a different scale. It messes with your head if $5 for a coffee becomes 50 cents. Initially, you might think it is a bargain, but soon it is 75 cents. Then $1, then $1.25. You are still paying more, but the perception is distorted. You have less money, and its purchasing power continues to dwindle. The problem was never solved, just repackaged. This is not some new phenomenon. Governments have been doing this for thousands of years. Look at ancient Rome or Egypt. When they got into debt trouble, they devalued their currency, mixing cheaper metals with silver, or even literally shaving off bits of coins. The outcome is always the same, and here is the scary part. When a reset happens, it is usually sudden. There is no warning, no 30-day window to move your money around. You do not get to vote on it. It just happens. You wake up and it is done. That is why being prepared before is so crucial. Now, it is easy to feel hopeless when you hear all this. It sounds like doom and gloom, and it can be incredibly scary, but I have learned that a reset is not the end of the world. It is not some black hole that is going to swallow us all up. It is just money. And if you are positioned correctly, it can actually be a massive opportunity. I heard stories from people who lived through the Mexican reset. One of my business partners, he was smart. He saw what was coming. He was exchanging pesos for dollars in the black market, which I do not recommend. It is dangerous. But he knew capital controls were coming, where the government restricts how you can access your own money. We are already seeing glimpses of that here, where banks ask you invasive questions about why you need your cash, and they can even refuse to give it to you. That is capital control in action. Anyway, this partner of mine, he owned hardware stores after the reset. He used the dollars he had accumulated to buy car dealerships, develop a huge marina. He became a mogul, creating generational wealth for his family. He got into the right assets at the right time. Another example is Carlos Slim, one of the richest people in the world during that reset. He got out of pesos and into tangible assets like gold mines and art. He understood the game. So while many people lost everything, others thrived. That is the opportunity side of a reset. You can be on the wrong side and lose money, or you can be on the right side and actually grow your wealth exponentially. That is why I am so focused on sharing this. It is not about selling fear, it is about empowering people to make smart choices. One of the key assets I have learned about, and what many central banks are accumulating like crazy, is gold. Why gold? Because it is not tied to any government or central bank. It is a stable, tangible asset. The Bank for International Settlements, which is basically the central bank of central banks, recently reclassified gold as a Tier 1 asset, meaning it is treated just like cash. It is highly liquid. If you are not liquid during a reset, you cannot take advantage of the opportunities that arise. You will just watch them pass by. And this idea that the dollar will always be king. Again, history tells a different story. The average lifespan of a global reserve currency is about 90 years. We are well over 100 now. Before us, it was Britain, then France, Netherlands, Spain. Empires rise and fall, and their currencies follow. It is not about American exceptionalism, it is about math and history. The use of the dollar in international trade has already dropped significantly. Gold is now the second largest asset for central banks worldwide. They know something is happening when people ask what a reserve currency means. It basically means other countries hold dollars to facilitate international trade. It gives us immense power, but that power is waning. When all other currencies are devalued against gold over the last 100 years and central banks are buying gold at record levels, it tells you they are preparing for something big. Some people might think about buying other foreign currencies to diversify, but honestly, that is like flipping a coin. How do you know that country's currency is truly reflective of its value? Do you really trust that their government is being transparent? I sure do not trust ours to be completely transparent on these matters. Gold is the stable play, the historical safe haven, and it is important to distinguish between physical gold and paper gold, like ETFs or GLD. If you have $100,000 in an ETF tied to the dollar and a reset happens, that could easily become $10,000. And your broker is not going to make up the difference. Furthermore, they can halt liquidations, meaning you cannot even access your money. Physical gold, however, is yours. You hold it, you can cash it out, and take advantage of opportunities. Counterparty risk is another big one. It is about trusting that another party will uphold their end of the bargain with banks, with government bonds. There is always counterparty risk. If they change the rules, and they can, you are out of luck. That is why I believe in tangible assets, something you physically possess. Then there is the concept of nominal value versus real value. Nominal value is the number you see in your bank account or on a bill. $100 is $100. But real value is what that money can actually buy. We have seen our real value plummet over the years due to inflation. My grandma's old ledger showed how much things cost in cents in the 1930s. Today, a penny is practically worthless. A nickel is next. This erosion of real value is a silent default, a stealth default. So, is there any way this does not happen? Honestly, it is just math. 2 plus 2 is still 4, no matter how much our government tries to fudge the numbers. History tells us, math tells us, that a reset is inevitable. The only scenario where it does not happen is a global nuclear war. And then we have bigger problems than money. We grew up privileged with a reserve currency, able to buy things cheaply. That era is ending. I want to show you a visual because sometimes seeing it really drives the point home. Imagine you have $1 million before the reset, all in cash or dollar-denominated assets like stocks or savings. If a 10-to-1 reset happens, you are left with $100,000. That is it. That is what you wake up to. Now imagine you took that same $1 million and based on historical patterns, you converted it into physical gold. Let S be conservative and say gold goes up 6 times in value after a reset, though it has gone up 10 times or more in other situations. That $1 million in gold would now be $6 million, $6 million versus 100,000. Which pile would you rather have? It is a no-brainer. Even if the nominal value of gold stayed the same, which it will not, but even if it did, you would still be in a much stronger position. You could sell $1 million of gold and still have $5 million left over. That is liquidity. That is opportunity. So, what do you do with that $6 million in gold after the reset? That is where advisors come in, people who understand how to convert your gold, how to seize those opportunities, because on the other side of a reset, assets like real estate, stocks, and bonds might be pennies on the dollar. The wealthy families in America, they know this game. They buy assets when they are cheap, and they sell when prices are high. This is how generational wealth is truly built. My business partners in Mexico who did well, they had the liquidity to buy up assets at fire sale prices. If you are just trying to pay the bills, you are stuck. But if you have that wealth, you can provide for your family, leave a legacy, help your community. The reset is about opportunity. That light at the end of the tunnel, I know people who went through it and did incredibly well. I have positioned myself to do the same. I own gold, so when the reset comes, I have the liquidity to buy whatever I want, whether it is real estate, stocks, or anything else. It is like a poker game.